We're at the In the Garage Media Tech Center today working on our 71 Ford Flareside pickup. We just converted it from a long wheelbase chassis to a short wheelbase chassis using a kit from Classic Performance Products. We've got all new sheet metal components from LMC Truck. That includes the bedsides, we've got new fenders, and we've also got new cross sills, a tailgate, and a tailgate latch kit, which is pretty chic, which we'll show you guys later. But right now we're going to concentrate on the initial bed assembly, how to get things square, how to make sure all your wood lines up, your panel gaps are right. We've got some screws to put in and some holes to drill for the front panel and a couple other things. So we're going to get that right, and we're going to show you guys how to rack the bed, get everything square. And this applies to any truck bed. It doesn't matter if it's a Ford Flareside, if it's a Fleetside, if it's an early truck, if it's an early Chevy truck, if it's a late Dodge truck, if it's got a bed. Hopefully we'll get some tips for you guys on how to assemble that bed and get it square and looking good on your pickup. So the first thing we're going to do to get our bed aligned and our bedwood in properly is we're going to go ahead and lay out our bedwood planks. And with this Flareside bed, we have 6 what I'll call internal planks, and then we have 2 outer or perimeter planks. These are machined differently. They have different miters on them. You can see on the external perimeter planks, there's a miter on the side that's going to go under that flange on each bedside. There's also a miter in the rear that's going to go under a wear strip, and we'll show that a little later. The internal or the center planks, they have the same miter as the perimeter planks on the inside, and that's where our bedwood, the strips are going to lay. And then, of course, our fasteners will go in between there, and that'll hold everything down. What we're concerned with right now are our 2 perimeter planks. We're going to slide those under. That's going to set the height of our bedsides, and that's also going to allow us to dial in that header panel at the front, and we're also going to check the spacing in the alignment in the rear as well. So LMC Truck provides these pretty nice stainless fasteners with a recess, big, nice, heavy-duty recess washer to locate the cross sill and everything. You got to drill the bedwood out to put these guys through there. We don't really want to do that. We want to keep it nice and clean so that all we have are the strips and the fasteners for the strips that's going to be visible. So I think what I'm going to do on this guy, I'm using these 1/2 inch just hex bolts for now just to keep the cross sills in place as we work towards that. But I think I'm going to get some button head fasteners for those down at the hardware store a little later, and we'll recess the bottom of our wood to clear that when the time comes. So as we start assembling our bedwood and we just start laying it in here in our box, we have to decide what we're going to use as a baseline as far as an alignment point. Do we align all the bedwood up at the rear? Do we align it up at the front? Typically on most of these trucks, I'll align it at the front because that's where it meets this header panel, and there's no strip at the front on most stock applications, let's say, to hide any of the misalignment. Usually on the rear, there's a wear strip, which we're going to put in ours, and you can kind of fudge that. If each board's a little bit off, that wear strip's going to cover that, so it's going to finish that end. But up here at the front, there's no cover in that, there's no finishing it. So there's a couple things we need to take into consideration. The first is the gap or the space between the end of the bedside and this surface of the header panel. The bedside's square, and if the header panel's not, you're going to end up, with something like that. So the alignment's going to look funny for starters. So we have to start setting up those baselines. And right now, as you can see up here, this bedwood plank is way proud of the bedside. This flange at the bottom here, they obviously don't line up. And then this header panel is way proud at the bottom and pretty nice at the top. The gap is real inconsistent. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to slide this piece of bedwood back until it lines up with this flange on the bedside, pull the header panel back in a little bit. I'm going to get the header panel to bedside gap pretty nice, and then we'll adjust the bedwood forward a little bit until we like that gap, till it's all pretty even. And at that point, we'll temporarily we'll put a clamp in here and kind of lock it down for now. We'll do the same on the other side, and then we'll continue on our way. With this corner established and those gaps set up, one thing I noticed is that the sight line, just looking down that flange to the bedwood relationship, where it's been machined, where it's got that little groove, it's almost perfect. I know we mentioned earlier how it had a little bow in it when we were looking at it. And just tying this panel to the header flange and adjusting that gap has whatever it's done, it's pulled it in kind of tight, and it looks pretty good. This side needs a little bit of love, but it looks pretty nice too. But it just goes to show you that as you start adjusting things and bringing gaps into consistencies and squaring things up, how everything kind of starts to fall into place. Okay, so right now we're just gonna square up this bed. We're just checking it for square, really. And I'm just taking a couple diagonal measurements. So I'm going from stake pocket to stake pocket. And basically all I wanna see is that they're the same or similar. And if not, we can come in and rack the bed as needed. So right there, we're pretty darn close. I mean, I'd almost call that even. So that gives us a pretty good idea of where we're going. Basically what that tells us is that the cross sills and the bedsides and the two planks that are in there are square, and they're not like that, you know. We're ready to start setting our boards in here. This bedwood kit's from LMC Truck Parts, and it is a kiln dried red oak. It's a really nice material. It's gonna be really tough, really durable in our truck, and it'll take a stain real nice. It's got a really cool, really pretty grain. You can see how this end isn't completely perfect, but that's okay because this is gonna get a strip that we're gonna install in just a second. But that front of the bed, that doesn't get anything. So that's that gap that we were talking about when we were setting up our bedsides. That gap across the back, that's what I was using these super fancy spacer plates for. You want to maintain a real nice consistent gap across the front of that because there's nothing that's going to cover that. Back here we can fudge it a little bit. That plate will cover that little finish plate, and that'll be fine. It'll be what it is. You guys probably noticed when I closed this tailgate that it actually latched in place. Obviously, we're not running the chains. We're not using that little link that held things in place. It's nice and rigid. It's not gonna vibrate and make a bunch of noise going down the road. Check out the video in the link on how we did what we did and what we used. These are all parts from LMC Truck. This is their latch kit. It's pretty slick, check it out. Also, we didn't have running boards, so we had to source those. We got those from smoothiefab.com. There's also another video that we kind of walked through the install, the bracket, drilling some holes and stuff. Check that out as well in the link. And for more cool tech stories like this and all truck related content, be sure to subscribe.